ಗಲಾಟೆ ನಡೆಯೋ ಹಾಗಿದೆ. ಮೊದಲು ನೀವಿಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಹೊರಡಿ. ಬನ್ನಿ. ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ದಿನ ಇವರೆಲ್ಲರಿಂದ ದೂರ.
During that road trip, they have fun, they bond, and after that, they go on a forest trail. And in the forest trail, they witness something terrible.
I have a super brilliant stage and movie actor, producer, now a director, Ashvin Matthew, with me today. I had an opportunity to watch his excellent comedy presentation in one of the plays, Gentleman, directed by Dr. Anil Abraham. May I welcome Ashvin.
Thank you, Ashish.
We have heard that comedy is something that ends with a good feel. So a stand-up comedian, how do we define that?
Everyone says stand-up comedy is a pretty new thing in India over the past X number of years. In English, yes, English stand-up comedy is pretty new, and the format of that we are using now is kind of taken from the West. But stand-up comedy by itself is actually something that's been followed in India since ancient times. Our kings had, like these people, the jesters, the court jesters, who would make fun of the things that are happening in the kingdom, or even with the king. He is the only, I think he or she, I don't know if there were any female jesters, but it would be very interesting to find out if there were. The court jester was the only person who had the authority to even make fun of the king and the queen. So right from ancient times, the comedian had a lot of power because it was their job to show what was going on in society, but covered with humor or sugar-coated with humor. So Vidi Rayapan, Kada Prasangam, ഇതൊക്കെ പണ്ട് തൊട്ടേ നമുക്ക് ഉള്ളായിരുന്ന കാര്യങ്ങളാണ്. Like we've had it for the longest time. It's just that we gravitated towards the Western style a little more lately. And the way I started it was when I was studying in Sydney, I was helping my boss. I was selling roof insulation first, door to door, and then I was selling paintings door to door. And my boss used to DJ on the weekends. So he was getting drunk and playing music at the same time. And after like about an hour and a half, he was so drunk, he just looked at me and says, "Take over, Ash." And he just fell. And I'm standing there, and everyone, they're dancing and stuff, and they just stop and they just stare at me. And I was like, I don't know what to do. So I just took up the mic and started cracking jokes. That's how it started. And then I was working in an Indian restaurant called the Royal India Restaurant in Strathfield as a waiter. And again, Mondays and Tuesdays are the quietest days in restaurants. And 60 people walked in the span of half an hour. And my manager got a heart attack. The chef got a heart attack because the menu, the orders are coming in. So my manager says, "Go outside and just do something." So I went out and I just said, "Ladies and gentlemen, you're very lucky. Mondays and Tuesdays, we have a little show." And I just started cracking jokes for 20 minutes. So by then, the chef had enough time to make at least the starters for the thing, and he could catch up with the orders. So then we started doing it every Monday and stuff. And then my friend told Prabhakar Rao, who was the manager of Sellers in Bangalore on Brigade Road. He told him that my friend Ashvin is here, he does stand-up comedy, and Prabhakar says, "Let's do this." So technically, I was Bangalore's first public stand-up comedian when I performed at the Sellers pub. I mean, we had stand-up comedians here like I think there was Ajit Saldana and Ruby Chakravarti, who would do shows at parties and stuff. But then when I did it at the pub, it was the first time it was like a public thing. So it was very interesting, very difficult at that time because people are there to have a drink. Jokes, hey, drinks. We are having drinks. What he is telling stupid jokes? Go sit, Ramaga. So in spite of that, when making people laugh was pretty interesting. And you were saying at stand-up comedian's job is to make people. It ends with people feeling good if you're good. Okay. And I always say it's easy to make people laugh, but it's difficult to make people smile. If you can do both, it's a great thing. And another thing that I read sometime back, which stayed in my mind a lot, is in Michael Caine's autobiography. He mentions Milton Berle saying the difference between a comic and a comedian. A comic says funny things. A comedian says things funny. I used to entertain family since I was 8 at the end of parties and dinners and stuff, imitating the Incredible Hulk and James Last, the music conductor. So it started from there, and it went on. In fact, I was just having a chat with one of our greatest actors in Malayalam cinema, Chemban Vinod, and he has cast me in one of his films, and he's cast me in a comic role. And apparently, when he had cast me, everyone is saying, Pasha, he's a villain, no? I mean, he always does villain roles. And that's the problem. In the Malayalam industry, nobody knows that I actually do comedy. They only know me as the English-speaking villain. So it's nice when someone recognizes that, and we tend to get stereotyped. So hopefully they'll see my funny side.
I was about to ask that because suddenly someone cannot bring in any comedy, right? So there should have been some past that you would have had, entertaining someone. So how was your college days?
Before college, it started in school. I think in third standard, I did a Charlie Chaplin performance imitation, and I really slipped and fell off the stairs. And everyone thought it was part of the act, and they gave me the first prize. They didn't realize my ass and my head was hurting so badly. Because I was wearing, like extra large trousers, I tripped. Then I was always the clown in the class, making everybody laugh and things like that, including the teachers. So college was fun. College was fun when I was in college. Most of the time I was in the girls' college, hanging out to see my girlfriend. And it was so funny that the chemistry teacher said, Mr. Ashvin, present, today, next week you will be here, or should I send register to the girls' college? Just asking. So I'll be like, next week I'll be here, sir. So yeah, college was fun. College was fun.
A little about the foreign education, and you have also been training in theatre abroad.
When you say the thing into theatre, or the reason why I left for my college education overseas was I live very close to Jagriti Theatre. Mr. and Mrs. Raja, Arundhati Raja and Jagdish Raja run Jagriti, and we're neighbors. And so from a very young age, I got to see some plays. I got to work backstage. And their son, Gautam Raja, wrote a play called Restless, the Spirit of Youth, with Gautam and Meenakshi Menon. They wrote a play. And I'm the oldest in the family, and my dad's a doctor, so everyone thought that I would follow in my dad's footsteps, Mutamonale. So Dr. Arno. And I was playing one of the Sutradaris. So in the blackout before entering on stage, one of the other kids, we were all, like newcomers, we're going to do our first play kind of thing. One of the kids said, "Are you nervous?" And in the blackout, I said, "No." And then, the curtains went up and we took our positions. Throughout the play, whenever I didn't have lines, I constantly was asking myself, why did I say I was not nervous? Why am I not nervous? I was excited. There was a nervous excitement, but not nervous or scared. And during that play, and by the time the play ended, I realized that's what I want to do, because I felt at home on stage. So I came back and told my parents I don't want to do medicine. I want to study performing arts. You can imagine they were like, heart attack kind of thing, because their worry was, what do you do after that? How do you support yourself? Doing theater. But my parents were very supportive. My family was very supportive, and they said, "Okay, you want to study? Go." So I joined University of Western Sydney, Nepean, where I started performing arts. I did a year's foundation thing, and I just started. But the problem was I couldn't finish. I just started, and I took almost 6 months off because of I had a bad breakup, and I didn't deal with that very well. Affairs of the heart, so to speak. And I stopped after a year, and I came back. And then I saw another ad saying study in Cyprus. And it was mass comm and radio and TV production with drama as an elective. So then I continued over there. When you ask what is different, at that time in the 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, there was a major pressure for kids to follow one of the professions. Doctors, engineers, computers were just starting. So if you don't do any one of those, you're nothing. you were nobody. And especially if your parents were in one of those professions, they almost thought that your children were a failure if you don't follow in those steps. So it was very difficult for me and very difficult for my parents as well. Because even in college, I didn't take maths. Instead, I took home science. So the number of relatives is there. But home science, chapati and then when my brothers and me are all sitting together, they'll ask my brothers, this was many years later when I was doing theater full time in Bangalore and acting and stuff. We were visiting someone's house, and you know how it is, right? When we visit relatives and there's a doctor there, he says, when I end up around, my knee is acting funny. Free consultations, right? So they ask my brother all these questions, and then the guy looks at me and says, drama. So that was the situation I was in. But at the same time, it was just, I was just convinced that this is what I like doing. And I don't care what anybody says, this is what I will do. I came back to Bangalore and I thought, okay, drama doesn't pay, theater doesn't pay. So what can I do to make money? So I thought, okay, I'm good at imitating people. I have a knack for comedy. So I made a CD with voiceovers, different accents. And that's how I started doing voiceovers for radio, for advertisements and things like that. And then I started doing stand-up comedy, corporate events. And that's another thing. People would call me from Bombay saying, we'd like to know a few things. And then they'll always call back and say, Ashvin, we're planning on going with somebody from Bombay, some artist from Bombay. And they would say, why don't you come to Bombay? Yeah? There's so many more, situations for you that can open up. And every time someone said, why don't you move to Bombay? I would tell myself that I would never go to Bombay. And I would say, you will call me, you will fly me there and make me perform. I will not come to Bombay. It's not that I don't want to say sell out, but that's the typical thing. I'm like, no, I would like to stay in Bangalore and be a Bangalorean who's performing stand-up comedy in other parts of India. So that kind of worked for almost so many, I think, 12 years it paid my bills. Then I was in advertising for some time. But yeah, coming back to studies, there's a very different approach to education when it comes to college and stuff. And some of my teachers here in India told me that I would be better off studying abroad because of the kind of person I was. I never liked just swallowing things that people say. I preferred thinking for myself. Like if we're learning a poem and the teacher says, this poem means this. And I'd be like, no, that's not, for me, that's not what it means. A tree can mean so many different things. It can mean strength. It can mean antiquity. It can mean family. The roots could mean family. There's so many different things. So I would never do well in my studies because, especially in literature and stuff like that, I had my own opinion. And they said, this is encouraged better overseas. So, and I had really, really amazing teachers. I'm always grateful. Mrs. Sebastian in Cottons, who's no more. Mrs. Nelson from Cottons, who's no more. Mr. P. N. Abraham, Mr. Santiago Ishvara Prasad from Cathedral College. I learned more from him outside college than inside. Whenever he had a break, he would come in and he'd look into the class, and if we don't have a class, he'd be like, Ashvin, let's go. And we'd go and have coffee and masala dosas outside. And he would tell me about reviews of Marlon Brando's films when he was young. And he would ask me to have that entire coffee with him in character. So I would pretend to be a different character. And then we would talk. So this is something you don't get, you rarely get with teachers who just push you to another level. And then when I was in Cyprus, I had this professor called Professor Neil Bratton. I think one of the greatest storytellers I've ever met in my life. And even now, whenever I'm thinking of telling somebody a story or reciting a story or a script idea that I have, I would think of how does Neil say it? How would Neil say this story? It's beautiful, when people they can set something up. It was in 1963. We were driving in the desert, and you set that mood up, and anyone who's listening, when performers can do that, they can pull the audience in. It's something else, and I'm very happy that I had teachers who I could learn from about these things. So now in India we have so many um, situations where you can study theater, drama, which is a great thing because there are so many kids out there who are like, this is what I want to do, and they don't need to go abroad. They can actually study here, which is a good thing. We've caught up.
You also had a span of teaching.
So I was teaching at the Millennium School in Dubai. So I taught drama and English literature from, I think, the third standard to the ninth and 10th. It was good. I love the teaching part of it. I couldn't handle the politics and the stuff. So I quit after some time. But teaching is something that I really like, and I think I'll go back to it someday.
Could you do something that your professors did for you?
My professors, and also when I was working at the restaurant, some of the guests knew I was doing theater, so they would ask me to serve food as a particular actor for the whole day, for the whole night when I'm serving them. So I would imitate Sean Connery and pretend Sean Connery was their waiter. Yes, would you like some more pickles with that? Yes, it's very spicy. You should be careful. Yes. Or Clint Eastwood. You just ordered a vindaloo. I need to warn you, it's spicy. So you have to ask yourself, do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? So yeah, I mean, it was teachers when they say like, yeah, do that. You know, like it was nice.
It was never been anything similar to a villain that we saw in the movies that we saw you as villain. It was a stylized villain. So apart from an English speaking villain, that style, how did you bring it?
I think it has to do with the fact that I didn't grow up in Kerala, and when I was studying abroad, imitating all these villains from Italian films and things like that, or that stuck with me. So even when I speak, a lot of people say when I speak Malayalam, I speak with a very different accent, as in not an anglicized accent per se, but it's the whole Kottayam, Koni, Pathanamthitta thing. But even if I can speak in Malayalam, but my mannerisms are not typical like a Malayali. In fact, Chemban said for the next film, he wants me to play an American Return guy thing. So I was going to tell him he's from New York, so let's have him speak like an Italian, but in Malayalam. So I think that'll be very interesting. Who, you know, so it's, if you look at it, it's like the whole De Niro, who said that? Who said that? And then you put it into Malayalam, say, so it's, you know, it'll be nice if you have not the usual way our actors spoke, because we follow thing, and our actors are so powerful on screen. I think Kerala is blessed, has always been blessed by having the most phenomenal supporting actors. Whether it's Tilagan, Nedumudi Venu, Jagdi, I'm talking about even before that, Adur Basi, you know, all these things. They were so powerful and they were so enigmatic on screen. The newer audiences or actors slowly, without realizing, tend to imitate them. You know what I mean? It's a simple thing of like arada. It's a thing of arada. You know, that we stress that arada. You know, that stress is there, and each town has those stresses between. And because I'm not from there, I don't live there, I didn't have that. So I had a Western mannerism, but with Malayalam dialogues, and I was wondering if people will hate me, but then I started getting all these messages saying, your style is very different, and I was happy to hear that.
Who was the person, because you are such a sweet person to talk, and people would have seen you as a comedian on the stage. Who was the person who identified that there is a villain, or someone can stuff a villain on you?
Shambhu. He's the one who called me for the first film, Vedi Vazhipaadu. And I got that job through Padma Priya and Sangeeta Padmanabhan. So Padma Priya had seen me on stage and we worked together on Veerali Pattu. So she's been suggesting my name in a lot of her movies, but I never got it. And then she suggested to Sangeeta, and then Sangeeta told, why don't you check this guy out? And he saw some of my photographs, and I remember he called me and said, "I like the way you wear faces." And he said, the role is very different. And he said, "You seem like a nice guy, but then there's a twist." And at that time, I was doing so much comedy that I thought it'll be nice to do something different. And it's always interesting when comedians play bad guys, like Robin Williams, and when he does a bad guy, it's scary because there's almost that manic comic energy comes out as a psychopath when you think. And please don't think I'm comparing myself to them. I just thought the idea was nice, so I said okay, and Shambhu just said, "Let's try this." And while I was shooting for that, Arun Kumar Arvind came to the set. He was a producer. He saw my shot and he said, "I'm casting you as my villain in my next film." So then it was just in that I was the doctor who's again smiling throughout, and then in the end you realize he's the bad guy. So but it just happened like that. I just kept getting roles like that. Then with Lalsa, I did Mr. Fraud. But one of my favorite characters that I'd liked playing, the bad guy, was in Tamar Padar, the minister. That character was different, and Dilesh Nair was really sweet. And he kind of explained to me. He said, "You're a new generation. You come from money, but you've joined politics, so you have that attitude of having money. But at the same time, it was nice to play that. It was a different kind of villain from what I've been playing till then. So that was nice. And the thing is, when I started off, my first film was English, but I played a priest. So, and in Hindi, I'm not getting parts. In Hindi, I'm getting parts only as teachers, priests, and they think my Hindi is not good. Because in that movie, my Hindi, I say my Hindi is not very good. So they really think my Hindi is not good. And so I'm stereotyped in Hindi, and then I'm stereotyped in Malayalam as the villain. So I think I have to write scenes for me in my films to show that I can do. But I'm looking forward to Chemban's new movie, which I play. It's a slightly comic character, which is nice.
There is this 1/2. I also watched the movie. Arun Kumar Arvind Murli Gopi team is kind of, in the sense, they come up with something different. How was it working with that team?
I loved working with Arun because again he said, "I want you to play a completely different kind of villain." He said, "You're a nice guy. Villains are not always the guys who are snarling and growling and things like that." He says, people who are bad are the people you can sit next to in a restaurant and you won't know they're bad." And he gave me that direction. Murli, I'm constantly in awe of Murli's writing abilities. I think Left, Right, Left is arguably one of the greatest scripts written in Malayalam cinema, and the film itself is one of the. I can go on and on and on about that film, the script, the characters. It's just so well written, well rounded, and performed as well. So. I'm not a fan of some of his other stuff, but I always know if Murli Gopi is the guy who wrote Left, Right, Left. For me, that is just phenomenal. And it was nice working with them. And it was also really nice working with Fahad, who I have immense respect for. I think arguably one of India's best actors. So getting a chance to work with all three of them in that film was very nice.
So coming back to your screenwriting, and you are ready with one of the films, but you had another plan, I think, on Tenkasi Brothers.
I had written Brothers first. See, the thing is, Major Ravi sir had asked me to write something for Lalsa. So I had written something for Lalsa, and Lalsa approved it. But we couldn't find a director at that time, and Major Ravi walked on to do something else. We spoke to Gautam Menon. They were all interested, but the production values kept going up because we thought we'll use another Tamil actor as well with Lalsa. And in the meantime, I've been writing. So I have about 14 storylines and treatments ready. And I thought, okay, it's time I did something for myself. And I wrote Tenkasi Brothers, and we thought we'll start with that because it had better possibilities commercially. And I thought it was always nice to start with a film where I can actually make money for my producers. So I spoke to quite a few producers, and one of them, Mr. Tenapan in Chennai, I said, I'll be putting some money as well. So I'm totally involved. He said, why don't you use your money and make a small film for me first? So, and I had written another story for my friend Shubha in Bangalore. So I called her straight away and I said, Shubha, don't look for any other director, I'll direct it. So that's how I ended up making Devi. And in the meantime, I've been speaking to Chemban, Nasser sir, and a few other actors for Tengasi. So hopefully that'll, as soon as I finish this and I get dates and stuff, I'll move into that one.
You are also a producer now. So with Tri Devi, you are venturing into film production. How is it to be a producer?
It can be stressful sometimes if you don't have the right people working for you and looking after things. If you have to micromanage, it becomes a little stressful. And because I was wearing 3 different hats, and in the end, I ended up acting as well in the film because my villain hurt his back during the COVID time. So I had to reshoot all his scenes with me acting as the villain. So I was writing, directing, producing, and acting now, which almost sounds like a vanity project. So sometimes it did get a little stressful, but it didn't bother me that much because I had a really good team and we knew exactly what we wanted to do and what we needed to achieve. So the minute we were planned and the money was set aside for that, it was okay. We had a little hiccup when it came to reshoots. So I went slightly over budget, but then again, we had kept that in mind saying there might be a problem afterwards. So let's just keep something aside for that. So it was okay.
Now with this pandemic, releasing part will be a little tough. So you have thought about will it be a OTT or?
We are going through this company called Purple Arrow Films. They're a marketing company. So they're the ones who are going to be trying to sell it to OTTs. Thing.
And yeah, one more thing which I would really want to know about because Dr. Anil Abraham, how did he find you? And because that was a wonderful experience watching you on the stage.
Thank you. I had very little to do. It was Anil's writing. It was hilarious. What he wrote was just. In fact, we tried it in 4 different accents, 3 or 4 different accents. We tried it. He wrote it as a Hyderabadi guy, and then I tried an Arab. And I tried a Frenchman, and then I tried a Malayali, and all of it worked because the script is so funny. You can do it as anything. Anil and me go way back because we've done theatre together. Bangalore Theatre Circle is very small, so we met each other, we worked together, we became friends. He was the best man at my wedding, one of my best men. So I know Anil really well. So working with him is easy because we connect very easily. So when he said, "Why don't you try this? Why don't you do this?" And he lets me go further before he pulls me back. When a director gives you the leeway to try different things, it's really nice. It's really nice. But yeah, it's always a closed space. It has to be a closed space, the playing ground in which you can play. Because if you just let loose, everyone knows that we can always go crazy. But yeah, that's why everyone in Gentleman was just so brilliant. So again, I can't take any credit for that. It's just the writing.
Ajit, Kirtana, everyone has, I mean, yeah, of course, Dr. Anil also played a very hilarious role.
Ramalingam, yes, to pee or not to pee.
And so now there are multiple hats on your head now with this Tri Devi coming up, and for more films too. So will you be concentrating on films further, or you have theatre again?
See, theatre and stand-up comedy, especially theatre, recharges my batteries to do everything else. So I will always come back to theatre. If I get the chance, I would always like to do theatre, and I will. But now that the doors are open, I'm going to focus more on filmmaking. But at the same time, whenever I can get acting jobs, I'd like to do that because my first love is always acting.
Talking about Bangalore Theatre Circle, now I think, see, there are a lot of, because whenever I go for a play, I find most of the, theatres used to be full. From an actor's perspective or a director's perspective, how is the reception for theatre in Bangalore?
I don't know the situation now because I haven't gone, I think almost for a year because I was just so busy with Tri Devi. But good plays always do well. I think I had gone to Jagrati. I had watched Oliana. Again, I had friends who were acting in it. It was packed. It was packed. So there's so many people doing plays. So sometimes it can get saturated. But then Bangalore theatre is also still small in many ways where we know, oh, if this person is doing a play, it'll be good. Or if this person is doing a play, it'll be good. So we still have packed shows, packed audiences, at least till last year. Now it has impacted the theatre thing really well, the COVID thing, because you realize that this is what people do to make money. You know, like it's their thing, and the actors and so many people who are out of work. So there's a lot of experiments with doing things online, which kind of works sometimes. But again, not everything is written for camera, especially online camera. So that's why when people ask me if I'll do stand-up comedy for a corporate event, but online, I'll say no. It just doesn't work for me. I like the live audience. You need to read their energy. That side is not laughing. I don't think they like that joke. Maybe I should try something else. You read people's energy and then you perform. And that's very important for me. So I can't do the whole online comedy thing. But having said that, people are trying different things. Necessity is the mother of all invention.
Yeah, yeah. So we see some of the painting exhibitions going online, which otherwise would have been some of kind of remote. But yes, of course, items like stand-up comedy and it is more enjoyed when we have the audience bouncing back at you.
Also, that's the beautiful thing about that. The energy. You know when you're performing, if you have the audience in your hand, listening to every word, you know you've lost them when there is a dip in the energy, and you know they're not listening to you. You hear four people going, you know you're gone. They're not listening to you. Oi, take the makeup off and go home. So that happens only in theater. I can't say which is better because both have their uniqueness, but theater, the energy is something else.
Compared to all other South Indian movies, how is Kannada movie scoring in terms of acceptance?
Over the last 5 to 6 years, the Kannada industry has been making some good films. Having said that, though, when you said comparison of Malayalam films to other South Indian films, I don't think you can compare any films to Malayalam films. We are on a different league. It's an understatement when I say I'm extremely honored to be part of that industry. It's the things that we are coming out with, the writers, the directors, and I think most importantly, why Malayalam films do well is because of the respect for the written word. The script is king. The script is king. The writer is king. All these industries have slowly started giving respect to writers. The Kannada industry has started giving importance to writers, and slowly good movies are coming out. So it's also nice to be part of that thing when just they're encouraging people and you come out at the same time. It's nice. It's nice to be part of this process at this time. Now again, in Kannada, smaller actors, smaller directors are making smaller films. The idea is to make smaller budget films. So at least the returns are, are pretty, what's the word? I'm at a loss of words. You're ensured your returns. And we have nailed that idea long back. Aju Verghese, smaller actors, comedians, you can use anybody. You can use anybody and make a movie, and it'll do well. If the script is good, you'll do well. And that is such a great encouragement for people in Kerala. A camera on actors on another story on film. And that is such an encouragement for anybody, for any, like theater actors, film actors, comedians. They're all part of the process.
A little more about Devi, because I did not ask anything about Devi. I'm keen to know.
The most simplest way to describe it is, it's a film about heroines in the absence of a hero.
ಹೀಗೂ ಉಂಟೆ 3 ಹುಡುಗಿಯರು ಕಾಡಿನೊಳಗೆ ಎಂಟ್ರಿ, ಎಕ್ಸಿಟ್ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ.
3 women dealing with different situations of patriarchy and misogyny walk out of these situations and they go on a road trip. And during that road trip, they have fun, they bond, and after that, they go on a forest trail. And in the forest trail, they witness something terrible. And they become witnesses. And then they're just running for their life. And they fight back, they try and survive, but they realize that's not enough because this entity, this person that's following them, will not stop unless they're dead. Because that person is protecting his way of life. and their existence threatens that. So in the end, it's three normal, regular women realizing that they have to commit murder to stay alive. How do you deal with that? And they channel their inner Devis to come out of the situation. And one of the actors in the film is playing a heroine in a movie. She's an actress. And she's acting as a Devi in that movie. So hence the idea of three Devi.
Spoke a little of a spoiler in that, but I think it's okay.
I don't think it's a spoiler. It's the journey, and it's what you see. Some films, if there is a twist ending, then it's a spoiler. There are some films where you can know exactly what is going on or what is going to happen, and still be interested. And hopefully, we've done that, because I've always been a fan of those kind of films, like All the President's Men. You know exactly what happened. You know Richard Nixon's story. You know what the journalist did. But when you're watching the film, it's so well written that you just go, you know what I mean? So I'm hoping we've achieved that.
Which part was more enjoyable?
Writing and directing. Of writing something and then creating an idea and then watching it come to life is beautiful. And more importantly, I had friends who always say, you write good stories or you write interesting stories, but now the idea is to see if you can actually make it exactly like how you have it in your head. And that was the challenge. And again, because I had a fantastic team, they helped me get exactly what I want in my head. So very exciting.
I think we'll catch up again once the movie is released, and once you are, and now this Tenkasi Brothers will be there, and of course you are teaming up with Chandan and more people in the Malayalam film industry, and we'll have more interesting stories. And I would love to hear it directly from you.
Inshallah. I hope so.
It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much,
Ashvin.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Wish you all the best.
You too. Bye-bye.